Hi, everyone. Welcome to Jewish Wisdom for Coping with a Pandemic. As this pandemic is come and gone, we have been here for, since March of 2020, when things first started to get really, really bad. We said we all need to come together, and that one spontaneous meeting has turned into a group that has met for close to 2 years now. So it's sort of unbelievable, but here we are. I'm pleased to see you. So we'll begin, as we always do, with a short meditation. So please get comfortable in your seat and close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like letting a wave float on past you in the ocean. When you inhale, imagine yourself floating up on the wave. And on the exhale, imagine yourself floating back down. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. And Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. And Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes. Well, I am very pleased to say that I'm out of my sling. Look, see, 2 hands. So I've gotten through the first 6 weeks of recovery from the shoulder surgery, so now I'm in phase 2. So it's very, very nice not to have the sling. I would like to begin today with a bit of a check-in. I would like to, we call this Jewish Wisdom for Coping with a Pandemic. And so I would like to know, how do you feel like you're coping? This has been a rough couple of weeks as far as the pandemic's gone. I find myself challenged. So I would just like to have a moment to check in. How are you doing? Joanne?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's scarier though. To have this new variant like taking over everything. I'm triple vaccinated, but I'm still wearing the mask more indoors and outside too. People pass by, and it's a little scary. But I went to the movies today at 11:30 with a friend to see West Side Story, because we knew the theater would be empty. There was only like 5 people in the movie theater, so we didn't feel that, threatened, and we wore masks.
Great,
So,
thank you,
but
Joanne. Carrie.
I'm doing okay. I mean, it was difficult because I was hoping to be with Paul at his mom's this week for Christmas, but I got sick, and I don't want to get her sick. But overall, I think I am adopting the attitude that this is a new way of life. This pandemic will end eventually, but another one will happen. And just as after 9/11, we reframed our lives, I'm in the process of doing that as well. I don't know what that will mean, but completely, but I understand that we're not going back to before, and I'm not mourning that anymore. I'm just moving on and saying it's the best thing to do. So I would say I'm okay.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you. And hearing, Karen, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
No, that was an accident.
Oh, okay. Great. Anyone else? Get a check in. Carol.
Yeah, not too much has changed for me. I'm kind of, I'm still very isolated, but I was kind of hoping to be able to get out and do a little bit more, but that's life. I'm kind of used to it, but I'm more anxious. I find myself with this new variant much more anxious. However, I heard something on the news that put my mind a little bit at ease, which is that California has the lowest rate of new cases of any state in the country. And knowing that we are in one of the most vaccinated and masking areas in the state does give me some comfort, but I'm still very, very careful. Mask everywhere, double mask everywhere. So, yeah, it's hard.
Thank you, Carol. I know for me, we're flying to Phoenix tomorrow to visit my in-laws, and both my daughters have flown home, and we're all have been, gotten their boosters, and I'm flying to Syracuse with my wife to visit my father in late January. And what, had been pretty, it's weighing on me a little bit, I have to say. It is, being out and on the planes and everything, going to another state. It is, it's not as much fun as it could be. And so, but that's, but the thought of not going is just completely intolerable to me. So we will do what we need to do. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, so I think that so I'm out in California, in Southern California, Huntington Beach, with my mom, and it was I felt okay leading up to the flight, but like a few days beforehand, Carrie and I had to make a decision because she was feeling just sick from regular grandchildren supplied flu cold stuff. And so she had to stay just for that. But once so I flew from Boston out to here, and yeah, definitely the anxiety level is up. I started to feel last night like a little scratchy throat, and it took me a couple hours to get back to sleep because part of me was wondering, did I come out here and I'm with my mom and that's great, but am I going to kill her? And I looked up the guidelines, and they said, well, it takes 3 days for the Omicron variant to show, and this has only been 2 days. So it's not that, but I'm still going to get myself tested. But all of the pharmacies around here, nobody has any of the at-home tests. That they're totally cleared out. So I'll have to do an in-person or drive-through, something like that. So it is an extra level of care, and as Carol said, I'm double masking everywhere that I go. And even this morning, I took my mom to an appointment, and because I just have this cold, I kept myself masked in the car while I was driving, just to make sure that there wouldn't be that transmission right there. So, yeah, it's concerning, but I just try and keep thinking about how, there are things I can have no control over, and all I can do is control what I can. There are things that I can do, so let me do those things, and then everything else I just have to let my, let God or my higher power sort of handle, because that's out of my scope. That's above my pay grade, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Well, that is a good segue to what we're going to talk about today. That may or may not be the last comment, but that is, very much I'm hearing it's on many people's minds, and people have a variety of different coping strategies in order to deal with it. Would anyone else like to comment, or should we press forward on our journey? Okay. So, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about our basic Musar assumptions. And one of them is we have this conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And I'm thinking about this one today just because there is so much room for anxiety and fear right now. And sometimes, and there are reasons to be concerned, but the question is, what's the right level of concern, and how does it impact my behavior, and does it become just a reframing of the world, as Carrie put in, or is it just move ahead with double masking, or there are some people who choose to believe it's not an issue at all, and other people who may go into high levels of fear. So what's the role that the good inclination and the evil inclination kind of play in navigating through, some of these possible responses? Yeah, Carol. Carol, you're all over this one, I can see. Or Carol, is that a accidental hand raising? Oh, okay. So anyone else, how does the good inclination and evil inclination kind of play into sort of how we respond to kind of the Omicron variant, or the things in the world? Yeah, Carrie.
When you said that, I was thinking of the people who get tired of masking and just say, oh, the hell with it, and I'm just going to go do my thing, and what will be, will be. And I know that I get frustrated sometimes and want to do that, but I guess the good inclination takes over, and I play it safe. But I can see that a lot of people are just, they don't probably see it as a bad inclination, but in a sense it is. It's caring about others or not caring about others, caring about yourself or not caring about yourself. And it just seems that almost everything we do in regards to the pandemic involves that question.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I love that. And I've had that feeling too. It's like, all right, I've had it. Enough's enough. Why am I bothering? These are, I agree with your interpretation. These are all the voices of the evil inclination, trying to kind of get us off track, trying to get us to give up on doing, what we need to do. And as you say, the good inclination is what can help us stay the course and make the appropriate decisions. And how else might the evil inclination or good inclination sort of try to influence us in this situation?
I will raise my hand now.
Okay, Carol.
Well, there are a lot of there's a big there's a big gap between, well, not a gap, a tension between my freedoms, doing what I want to do, or and that sort of view, whatever I want to do, that's fine. Why should I worry about this thing? I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm vaccinated, whatever. And thinking about the community, what is best for the community? This is a public health crisis, accent on the public. So I think that's a big tension. And how much do you balance that? You can't do everything for the community. You have to do some things for yourself. For example, you need to see your father. You need to do that for your dad, right? But if you were all the way the other way, it'd be like, oh, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not risking me or anybody else. And that's kind of an extreme. Well, that's me. I'm not going anywhere because I'm not risking me. It would be dangerous. But for a healthy person, it might not be dangerous. And as long as you do all of the right things to take precautions, then you're listening to that balance, I think.
Thank you, Carol. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper. Okay, so we have this balance, as Carol and Carrie were talking about. So let's talk about trust. So this is a slide that you've seen before in the year and a half we've been meeting, but it's been over a year, believe it or not. So I have a volunteer to read the first bullet, please.
I'll
I'll
volunteer.
read it.
Nobody else. Oh, okay, go ahead,
Go
Carrie.
ahead, Cal. No, go ahead, Cal. You go.
Trust is a powerful sense of optimism and confidence based not on reason or experience, but on emunah, faith. You know that God is good and He's the only one in charge, and therefore you have no fears or frets.
All right, thank you, Carol. So this is from Rabbi Tzvi Friedman. He's a Chabad rabbi. He has a certain, represents a certain strain of Jewish thought, which I would, hello? Oh yeah, okay. Who has a certain strain of kind of Jewish thought. I have my daughter bringing me a nice drink, yes.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Becky. So what is his point? What is he saying, and what do you like and dislike about it? And I will copy it into the chat as well. We're a quiet group today. Yeah, Bonnie.
I'm very comfortable with that. I happen to think that if I had to put a sex on God, on which I have, God is a woman. And I have regular conversations with God. And I'm very comfortable with the idea that that God is truth, God is faith, God is emunah, and I'm in partnership. It's not that I expect God to do these things, that it's a partnership, that I do the best that I can do, and then I turn it over to God. Now, there's a lot of 12-step stuff in that. And I'm very comfortable with that. I just finished a gigantic remodel. I mean, gutted the entire house, and 98% of it went during the pandemic without a hitch. And the last 2% is when I laugh and say I got an email from God, and she wrote, "Man plans and God laughs." That's what my last 2 weeks, beside the fact I broke my hand 6 weeks ago, that's what the last 2 weeks have been about with this remodel. And as long as I look at it, man plans and God laughs, I'm okay.
Thank you, Bonnie. And how is your hand?
My hand is getting better. How is your shoulder? I don't see a
It's good. Yes, I showed earlier. I'm out of the sling.
oh, no sling. So I have another 2 weeks with the cast, the smaller cast.
As I would say, look, Ma, 2 hands.
Yeah.
So,
So that's I really like that. And I'm not a Chabad person at all.
great. Other thoughts? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I was thinking about the first part about trust is a powerful sense of optimism and confidence based not on reason or experience, but on emunah or faith. And so my father was the kind of person that was a very skeptical. He was a seeker. He was definitely spiritual, looking for something, but he was very skeptical that about anything that was, that he would see. And I certainly learned that from him. And it took me a very long time to overcome that. And along the way, though, I did have experiences where I experienced something that was much larger than myself. I was, when I was 7, I fell off a roof. I was, while I was out, I was unconscious for a half hour. And during that time, I experienced my sort of an out-of-body experience. And it took me most of my life to realize, oh, that's what they mean by out-of-body experience. I was up on the rooftop and floating around and very peaceful. And so there have been these experiences, and that's what's kept me sort of tethered to the idea that there's something bigger than myself. So as Bonnie was saying, talking about the her, the way she's framed it, I think my last 5 years of being in a 12-step program, I've been able to build that into more of a framework that is, I feel is part of my everyday life, as opposed to very episodic. Every 5-10 years, I have something. It's like reminding me, remember, there's something bigger than you are. So I think now when I read that, I feel comfortable, but I think 5-10 years ago, I still would not have felt comfortable with that. So, and it's, for me, it's because I've taken that experience and I put it into a framework, and I'm working with it all the time. So it's become part of my larger experience, and now I trust it. Getting to the, not to step on where we're going, but just saying.
Well, no, that was beautiful, Paul, and thank you. You said, you used a couple of phrases I really like being tethered to that point of view, and also talking about how this is 5 years of work to develop that. I mean, faith is itself a soul trait. Trusting in the divine, that is a soul trait. These are things that we can work on and build and cultivate. And there have been times where I felt very heavily kind of in a really good place with trust and being okay with what happened. And there have been other times where it's been a struggle. So I really like that sort of tethering. You almost think of it like the other extreme, where cousin so-and-so got really into hallucinogens and was way out there and needs to get tethered back to the quote real world. So having me tethered to the world of something bigger than ourselves, I think it's a very nice, it's very powerful to me. Who else? Carol.
Well, I feel tethered to something bigger. I mean, they're definitely something much bigger than me. That said, I'm not entirely comfortable with this. And I struggle a bit with the idea of faith and trust. I don't always trust. I believe I have to do everything I can do before I let go and let God. And even then, it's hard to do. I can say, okay, I've done everything I can. It's no longer really in my hands. But that doesn't mean I stop worrying about it,
Mm.
stop thinking about it. I'm not really able to let it go. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to take care of myself and do what the doctors say and blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't mean I'm not worried about it. I'm probably way more anxious about COVID than I am about cancer, but because I know that that's being managed,
Mm.
not by God, but I mean, it is ultimately managed by God, I suppose, but it's being, I have good medical care. But I'm a worrier, and I'm not. I've had some really profound lessons in trust during the pandemic, as I've discussed here before. But that still doesn't mean I can trust easily, and that is one soul trait I think I still need to work on balancing.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for sharing that. Karen, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I don't really see the connection between optimism and trust. And I do find it easier to trust in a supreme being than to trust in others. And I definitely feel that you have to have a faith which builds over time in order to have that trust. But also, at least in particular in Judaism, I've been taught that our future is really a partnership, that God created us, in partnership with him to run the world. And so to put complete trust in God, I can't do that for the way things should happen, but I can trust that in my relationship with God or how I do things, that things are going to work out the best way they can, even if I don't see that.
Mm. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, it's a really good point, a really good question. Offering partnership, and how does that all come together? It's well said. I'm sharing in the chat just the other quote from the page, and this was from me, where you wrote just commenting that the sort of classic Musar teachers do require sort of faith being a precursor to trust. And in here, again, we're talking about sort of trust in the divine or trust that things are going to work out. And I don't feel the need to have that argument. If someone isn't sure about God, if someone isn't sure about the higher power or it means something to them in a personal way, it doesn't mean that we can't practice, this idea of trusting that things are going to work out, or realizing that some things are outside of our control and it could be okay. Any thoughts or comments on this second text in conversation with the first, or we can dig a little deeper? Randy.
Yeah, it's sort of an overall comment, and I'm not quite sure how to say it, because I heard this neurologist talking about cynicism, which I guess is the opposite of trust. And one thing, sometimes I think, well, how do you make this simple? And he said something that made it simple for me. He said, well, if you do a good deed or an act of kindness, it has the same effect on your brain as eating a candy bar. And I thought, wow, I never thought of it quite that way. And I said, well, I think there is a truth there. And that's an interesting connection, especially if you were telling somebody that was younger. I think they could make that connection good. And I also was thinking of when we're talking on trust, because as a human being, like with the pandemic, and we're so close to things that are so difficult, and it touches us in places where our perspective gets lost. I took a motorcycle class with my daughter a couple years ago, so I know and I learned something in there You know, like if you're going to go around a curve and, you know, maybe there's something in the road, you know, some nails or whatever, that yes, you must scan, you must see everything, but you never take your eyes and fix them on those things. You always must put your eyes and look through the turn where you want to go, because the rule is you will always go at the things you're looking at. And I thought, wow, that sort of speaks to me, this thing on trust. I know in Jewish wisdom, there's a lot of things that say, well, you need to cover over these things because you can't see correctly or be correct unless you have to sort of hide your attention from these things and focus on these other things. And anyway, if that is helpful, I think with the pandemic, it's like, it makes me think, it's like, wow, how much good is waiting for me in this next year? If I'm not looking for it, I may not connect to it. And I sometimes think of like equations, it's like, well, how much energy for good is there? Like what Einstein did, it's like there's that much energy in that little bit of matter. How much energy for good is there in the universe? It's like I may not be able to see this with my eyes, but there's something that rings true. There's a wisdom or truth in there.
Well, thank you, Randy. That was beautiful. There's so many things that I could react to, but what I'm hearing from that last bit is kind of, there's good that's out there, and maybe it's an act of trust that it is there, that we're not seeing it, that there's this huge potential that's locked away that we may not see, but the energy is there, and there's, we can eat the candy bar, or we can do an act of kindness for someone and unlock that goodness. I thought it was so interesting that you brought up cynicism sort of early on, that this neurologist was talking about cynicism. And I was thinking, like maybe trust is kind of a cure for cynicism, because if you're cynical, then you can't sort of it's sort of the opposite of optimism. It's kind of like, well, there's always some negative explanation you can put towards whatever happens. And trust is, and there is an inherent, I think, optimism to Judaism, which is that things are going to be okay. That it says in the book of Deuteronomy, we are going to, be redeemed and get the land of Israel back. It's sort of this optimism that, yeah, we're going to mess up along the way and various things are going to happen, but at the end of the day, we are going to do what we need to do and we're going to turn out okay. So these are some of the associations that came up from what you shared, Randy. Thank you. Karen, I see your hand.
So I think about whether trust is earned or trust is lost. Do we start at the bottom and work our way toward trusting, or do we start with trust and see if, it stays at 100% or we lose it? And I think, I don't know, I think it's easier to grow toward trust than it is to have trust and be able to keep having that trust as we go through the pitfalls of life. Maybe that's where the optimism comes in. It keeps boosting us.
Karen, trusting other people or trusting the divine or universe? What do you?
I think it's both. Because if you start out knowing that you need to trust the divine and life doesn't seem to go the way you want, you can't understand it, maybe optimism is what boosts you back into that high level of trust. And for others, whether it's the divine or it's a lower level relationship, maybe. I always thought trust had to be earned. And so this was very different when I first experienced the soul trait of trust, and not just trust from person to person, but trust between humans and the divine, and how different that relationship of trust is. Any other thoughts?
Sorry, I didn't quite, what were you asking there, or?
Does anyone else have thoughts about that? Maybe the difference in the relationship of trust between humans and the divine versus humans to humans, or any other type of relationship, humans to animals. I don't know.
Yeah, Joanne,
Let me see if I'm muted again.
you are not muted.
Oh, God. Okay, good. Yeah, actually, well, thinking about animals, I think it's easier to trust a dog or a cat than a human being, because you kind of, they're acting instinctively, whereas human beings may have ulterior motives and whatever, you know. But even trusting God, I mean, there's a famous saying, "Gamzis," well, this is also for the best, even if you think you're going through a hard thing. And I'm reading Psalms every Thursday also, and King David's even saying, I think when he has illnesses and things, he feels like he's being punished for something he did that was wrong, and but he does a lot of prayer and I guess meditation to get back in God's good graces and get help when he needs it, and is very joyful, of course, when that happens. So I think it's like a mixed bag. I had cancer in 2011. A lot of people prayed for me, but I also did some of my own, and I also just felt really, I guess, in a way, blessed that it was a really treatable one, and it really wasn't so bad, even though it was. Chemo is the worst, like it's the most horrible thing, but I got through it, and I think maybe also trusting my doctor, helped, and but also knowing that people were in my court, so to speak, really helped a lot. I don't know what the point of all this is. Just thoughts.
So I muted myself. Thank you, Joanne. And Carol.
I just had a weird thought, which isn't unusual. But my reasoning about, or my difficulties with trust, is not, do I trust somebody to be honest, or do I trust them? It's, do I trust somebody to be there for me? Do I trust people to care enough about me to be there when I need them? And that's a big one. So I'm wondering if I trust God or don't trust God to be there for me when I need God. I don't know. That's a personal thing with me, obviously, but it was kind of like a little, hello.
That's really interesting, Carol. And as you started talking, I was wondering if you were going to go there, because I was thinking back to Karen's question, about the trusting in people, trusting in the divine. And yeah, I think that maybe Rabbi Tzvi's point of view is like, yep, God's going to be there for me. That is, and maybe that's part of what one could cultivate, is an attitude like that. And there is, on the flip side, of course, if you're too much into that, then you can lose your own initiative. Yes, Paul. And then we'll look at one more text and then jump into breakouts.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Karen, for bringing up that question, because it's something I've been considering and just wondering about the last few months, and the part that makes sense to me is that if I am allowing myself to be open to my God, my higher power, And that is the context or the framework in which I am having a relationship with somebody else, a person. That makes it easier for me to trust. I mean, it doesn't even mean that the other person believes the same thing that I do, but it's more that I am creating that for myself, and that it's hard to separate the two. I guess it's not one or the other for me, but I'd say that at this point in my life, having that openness and including my higher power makes it easier for me to engage, take the risks that are involved in developing a relationship, a friendship, with somebody. Thank you.
Greg, you're on mute.
Ah, okay. I was really eloquent on what I was saying. So I was saying when Randy was talking about sort of going on a journey earlier, I was thinking about this quote. So Randy, would you mind unmuting and reading this out loud, please?
Trust or tie. We are placed in a world in which we never know whether we are facing a situation in which we simply need to let go and trust, or a situation in which we need to actively resist the direction in which the path ahead of us seems to lead.
Thank you. That's from Rabbi Cantor Allison Wiscott, Musar Torah commentary. So what is, I'll put this in the chat. So what are we taking from this text? How does this relate?
Back into the discussion of partnership with God for me. And I think there are a lot of times, I agree with this rabbi, I think there are a lot of times where we see we're in a situation and we have to decide, are we going to another way? And for me, as long as I feel that I've done, again, what I can do, then I'm ready to turn it over.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any other thoughts? The other connection that this brings up for me is a little bit back to our discussion about choice points, similar to what Bonnie was saying a little bit, as we actively process what's going on. And we need to decide, is this a direction we want to go or not go? And do I get on the plane to visit my father in January, or do I not? And it feels to me like that's the direction that the universe wants me to go, is that this is I have a very strong need to make this visit, and I just have to let everything else take care of itself. We have a little bit of time for our breakout groups today. And what I wanted to do is, maybe discuss a little bit about how comfortable you might feel asking the divine for support right now. Or is it the universe or community? There's no right or wrong answers here. And maybe if you have time to write a bit of a mantra or intention to draw strength. And Karen, I see your hand as well, so I'm going to put this in the chat. And then yes, what are your thoughts?
I forgot. I'll go right into chat.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's get the breakout rooms here. Okay, so you should see the join breakout room button.
Need more time when we do these breakout sessions. Carrie,
So,
really getting into this discussion.
well, feel free to exchange each other's emails in the chat or phone numbers and carry on your discussion. Wish we'd had more time. I do like to I like to get to them earlier, but we usually get so meaty in our other discussions that we don't. But anyone have anything they'd like to share kind of from their conversation?
Well,
Yeah, Joanne.
no, well, I was discussing with Paul, I guess, things that, happened when I was a kid and as a young adult that seemed almost miraculous and seemed almost as an answer to my question or my prayer. And then, I suddenly was in this wonderful state and then it didn't last. But while it lasted, it was like really amazing. And I think that it takes a lot of work maybe to get to that place, where everything lines up kind of. And you could feel that, connection maybe to the divine.
Thank you, Joanne. Sometimes I feel like we get one freebie, like we get one free connection that we don't have to work for. And then after that, we have to work for it.
Uh-huh.
So,
That's fair.
Grace.
I want to say because it was cut when I was starting to speak. And Randy, he was saying to give space to the divine to get in and make the work also. And I feel very much that with trust. Like, how can I make room and clean my boundaries so the divine presence can make the work on me? This is what I'm practicing now. I like this prayer, like that my soul will rest in Pata Nefesh, so the divine presence can do the work. But if I'm all the time trying to do things and blah blah blah, so there is no possibility to co-create. So I feel very much this, and this is my work now, my practice now. How can my soul rest? Time can make.
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, it's something we need to make room for. And if I was running around, then there's no room for it. Karen, I see your hand.
I wonder if people want different things in a trusting relationship with the divine than they do in a trusting relationship with their peers or humans. Because for me, the trust that I have in the divine offers me things like strength and clarity and insight. Whereas when I place trust in another person, sometimes I'm looking for something more tangible. And so I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Thank you, Karen. Carol.
I'll just quickly share a mantra that I came up with in my mind, is just stop, make room for the good.
Stop and make room for the good.
Or stop and make space for the good, yeah.
Mm,
Nice.
love that. Thank you.
That's terrific, Carol. I really like that.
Me too.
I have my conversation mates to thank for that as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Came up in our discussion to make room for the good, make space.
That's a very good one to put. I mean, with all of these mantras, it's great to put them on a sticky note or a inmate card or on your screensaver and put it somewhere where you'll see it, you know, on your bed table or on the bathroom mirror where you can see it in the morning. It can help frame your day and remind you, because it's very easy within here where we've carved out some time and created some sacred space. But once we leave here, the text messages can start again and all of the distractions of the world begin. And that's where the work of remembering becomes harder. Yes, Bonnie.
So I mentioned that I've been in a 12-step program for about 11 years now. And one of the things that did for me was starting the Serenity prayer, which is was a morning and evening. And then I expanded it so it would be bookends. And so I have English prayers and I have Hebrew prayers that I say, and not a traditional list. But I've, over the last 5 or 6 years, found that Carrie Olinsky's books on daily readings have been more helpful for me than my Al-Anon books. And what I have found, and I mentioned it to Carrie, is that I am starting to take things from the book and putting them into my gratitude journal and using them in my prayers. So I don't know about anybody else, and I've heard him speak and I've, done some work that he's done in the Jewish community. And I really like the way he approaches night times and day and, so just a piece that I've learned that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Could you say the name of the person again?
Carrie Olinsky, he's a rabbi and he does a great deal of work with Jews by choice and I believe interfaith, but a lot of work with Jews by choice.
If you could, Bonnie, if you could put that into the chat, just type it in.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Well, Bonnie's doing that, and thank you for sharing that, Bonnie. I want to put up the trust actions. These are from the end of the chapter that I wrote. But I think a lot, as I was looking at this during the break, I think a lot of this are things that we've talked about, reaching out to others or using a mantra. Number 3, I think really is the one that struck me, which is surrendering the need for a particular outcome. That reminded me of what Carrie was talking about earlier. We can't, we cannot put our hopes in a particular outcome around, well, this vaccine, that's going to take care of this pandemic. I mean, it's going to run its course. Taking action to help other people, that's, back to Randy and the candy bar story. And also, looking to practice personal trust, trusting that you'll be able to handle it. And I used to have this wonderful bracelet with a little hamsa, which I really liked because I could use that to kind of hold. That sort of reminded me of holding the hand of the divine. So there was also, so we'll do a closing mantra and then I'll just share one other piece of information. So not closing mantra, closing meditation. So let's all close our eyes. Once again, take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale slowly through the mouth and hold. Let's take a moment of gratitude. for those souls who've chosen to be together today. For this group that we've come to trust a bit, to give us an opportunity to wrestle with ourselves, wrestle with the divine, to wrestle with some of the bigger questions of life. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here. I had someone email me and ask me about what our upcoming soul traits were going to be. And I'm following the ones that are in the book, 2 weeks for each soul trait. So it's from my book, The Spiritual Practice of Good Actions. If you don't have the book, you could get, like, the table of contents is available on like Amazon Preview or Google Previews and that kind of stuff. So I'll have another week to trust, and then I can't remember what comes next, but that's, and I think the 1 week in January I'll be taking off and I'm visiting Syracuse, but there are no other vacations planned at present.
So we will meet next week.
We will meet next week, yes.
Thank you, Greg.
Good.
All right, well, wishing you all a wonderful week. And I look forward to seeing you then.
You too, Greg. Safe travels.
Yes,
Yep, safe travels.
safe travels, and thank you,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
everyone. Yes,
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
About
bye.
to-
Thank you.
Goodbye.